Hi, welcome to Once Upon a Story. Have you ever felt like you don't belong? Today's story is one of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales about a duck who doesn't belong anywhere. Sit back and relax for today's story. Today's story is The Ugly Duckling. Once upon a time, there was a mother duck who had been sitting on her eggs for a very long time. She was getting tired of waiting for these eggs to hatch. But she sat and she sat day after day. The other ducks all swam in the pond, and they didn't like to come up to the muddy shore to talk to her, so she was getting rather lonely. Finally, her eggs began to crack, and out hatched her beautiful little ducklings. They all hatched except for the largest egg, which stayed there, not cracking at all. Along came one of the ducks from the pond, and she came up to shore to see the new ducklings and talk to the mother duck. "Oh my," she says, "that big one's not cracking yet? I bet it's a turkey's egg. I sat on some turkey's eggs once. Those turkeys, even though I took great care of them, they wouldn't swim. I tried to get them in the water, and they wouldn't come. At all, ever. It was a giant waste of my time. I hope you're not wasting your time on a turkey's egg." "Well, I don't know," said the mother's duck. "It might be a turkey's egg, but I've waited this long. I can wait a little longer and see." "Suit yourself." And off swam the other duck. The mother duck sat and waited a while longer, and finally the largest egg began to crack. When it did, out came the ugliest duckling she had ever seen. It was awkward and gray and really, really kind of ugly to look at. She says, "Oh my, I hope you're not a turkey. Really, I hope you're not a turkey. But we'll see. We'll see if you can swim. That'll tell us whether you're a turkey or not." The next day, the mother duck took her ducklings down to the pond for their very first swim. In jumped the ducklings, plop, and they fell under the water and quickly popped back up and kicked their little legs and swam along. Even the largest ugly duckling, in fact, he was the best swimmer in the bunch. "Oh my," remarked Mother Duck, "you can swim. In fact, you're a better swimmer than all the others. I bet you'll grow up to be perfectly handsome. It'll be fine." So the ducks swam along, and they were happy as could be. The next day, the mother duck took her little ducklings to the barnyard to meet all of the other ducks and all of the other farmyard animals. When she introduced them, they said, "Wow, what beautiful little ducklings you have. They look perfect. But what about him? What's wrong with that one? That one doesn't look right." The mother duck said, Oh, don't worry about him. He's not quite as beautiful as the other ducks, but he's a great swimmer. I'm sure he'll do just fine when he gets a little older." "Well," said the other animals, "if you say so, but he's awfully ugly." And the other ducks began to snap at him. Snap, snap, snap. The poor ugly duckling just shied away and didn't know what to do. Even the little girl who fed the ducklings in the barnyard would kick him when she saw him and say, "Wow, you are the ugliest little duckling I've ever seen." Well, the ugly duckling put up with it as long as he could, but day after day, even his brothers and sisters would tease him and peck at him all the time. He couldn't live like this, so he wandered off to see if there was anywhere else where maybe he could belong. When he wandered off to a far pond, he found some other ducks, and they looked at him and said, "Well, you're never going to get married to one of us. You sure are ugly, but if you want to stay, I guess you can." At that moment, the ugly duckling heard gunshots. Bang, bang, and the ducks he was talking to fell over dead. The ugly duckling went and hid as the hunters shot at the wild ducks on the pond. And he said, "Oh my, this is no place for me. I can't live here." So he wandered off, sad and alone, and finally came by a cottage in the woods. It was an old, run-down cottage and almost falling over, and the door didn't latch tight, and so he wandered in. Inside, he found an old woman, a cat, and a hen. He huddled in the corner, hoping they wouldn't notice him, But the cat and the hen noticed him and started squawking and meowing and making quite a ruckus. The old woman came over to see what the fuss was all about. "What have we here?" she says. "Who are you?" And the ugly duckling just sat silently, hoping she would just let him stay. "Well, I don't know. It's just another mouth to feed," says the old woman. "Maybe you'll produce eggs. We'll see. We'll let you stay and see if you're an egg layer. If you're an egg layer, you can definitely stay." The ugly duckling stayed, and the hen talked to him every day, and she said, "My, I don't think you're an egg layer, are you? Can you lay eggs?" "No," said the ugly duckling. I don't know how to lay eggs. I can't really do anything." She says, "Well, my, you are the ugliest duck I've ever seen, and you can't lay eggs, and you're not soft and snuggly like the cat. I don't think you really belong here." So one night, the ugly duckling wandered off. Now it was getting to be awfully cold out. The leaves were falling off the trees, and the ponds were starting to freeze over with the ice for the winter. He watched as the other geese and birds flew away, finding somewhere warmer for the winter. He saw a group of swans take off and fly away, and he wished he was as beautiful as they were. They were the most beautiful birds he had ever seen. But alas, they were gone. Everyone was gone. All winter, the poor ugly duckling had to try to find food and try to stay out of trouble, and it was a long, hard winter. So hard, we shouldn't even mention all the things that this poor duckling suffered. Finally, the pond began to thaw. It was spring, and all the ducks and geese and swans and all the birds were returning from the south where it was warmer. And the ugly duckling was at the pond one day, and he saw that the swans had returned. They came, and he thought once again they were the most beautiful creatures ever. And he thought, "Oh, even if they peck me to death, I would rather die among them than alone here. I must go and see if there's any chance at all that they could accept me, even though I am just this ugly, awkward duckling." He walked over and hopped into the pond and began swimming along with the other swans. Immediately they came up to him and they began to admire him. They weren't pecking him at all. He didn't understand, but then he looked down into the water, and he saw his own reflection, and he was one of the beautiful swans too. "How could this be?" he said. I thought I was an ugly duckling, but I'm beautiful like these creatures." Just then the little girl from the farm and her brother came, and they were throwing bread and cake onto the pond for the swans to eat. "Look, look," they said, "there's a new swan, and he's the most beautiful of them all." And they threw bread and cake, and all the other swans admired him. Now, because of everything he had been through, he was a humble swan, but he was also a happy swan. He was as happy as he had ever been. He thought to himself, "I never dreamed that I could belong somewhere, and here I am, among other birds that look just like I do, and I'm not ugly and worthless after all." And he lived happily ever after. The end. So, the ugly duckling finally found his place in the world and learned that he is not an ugly duckling after all. I hope you enjoyed today's fairy tale. If you did, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more great stories. If you would like to suggest a story for me to tell, please leave a comment below. See you next time!